2016 Kia Soul EV review. Electric toaster. 90 miles of real-world range. We can live with that. Judged purely on its EV-ness, I think this Kia does everything it needs to very well. But at nearly $40,000, it just seems like a lot of coin. We'll get back to that in a second. This Soul is rated at about 90 miles on a full charge. Plenty for my daily commute and then some. I drove it home the first night with an indicated 87 miles of range. My commute is about 17 miles, and dang it if I wasn't exactly at 70 miles range when I pulled up to my door. And that was with the AC cranking. In the morning, I think I lost like 2 miles overnight. I kept it in B, battery charge mode, which ups the aggression of the regenerative brakes, and I only used 12 miles of battery to cover 17 in the real world. So kudos for that. Kia B mode does a good job of slowing the car down too. If you plan ahead a bit, you barely have to use the brakes thanks to the strong regen. The Soul EV isn't particularly slow, and I could stay at 80 miles per hour on the freeway all day long. Well, at least until the battery ran out. I did enjoy getting into the red zone of the speedo, which is about 87 miles per hour. I'm guessing your range goes down precipitously after that. The base Kia Soul weighs about 2,800 pounds, and this electric model has about 500 extra pounds of heft to move around. It stays relatively flat in corners, and steering weight and feel are better than I expected. While I dodged most potholes, I did hit a few, and there wasn't very much noise in the cabin. Overall, the interior was quieter than I expected, with both road and wind noise muted by the sheet metal and insulation. The Kia Hyundai radio setup is great. The USB port is right up front where it should be, but thankfully to the left of the shifter so it doesn't get in the way. There are a bunch of cubbies for phones, drinks and the like. Oh, and it's got fold-in mirrors, a nice touch on a budget-minded car. Well, not that budget-minded. Our Soul EV Plus, can we get away from using characters in names, please, starts at about $37,000. The non-EV Soul Plus comes in at about $20,000. Even with the max tax credit of $7,500, this would still be somewhere around $30,000. That's 10 extra grand that could be spent on gas for your non-EV Soul Plus, which gets about 27 miles per gallon combined. With gas prices at about $2 for regular, you could buy 5,000 gallons with the extra money, which would take well over 100,000 miles before you evened out. I guess the Volt is about the same price, but you can take the Volt on a road trip without worrying about charging. I'm not anti-hybrid or even anti-EV. They're usually quick off the line and they corner flatter than their non-electric counterparts. I just think it has to make financial sense to take a leap like that. To be fair, the cheaper non-Plus Soul EV starts at $32,000. The tax credit would make it about 25 grand, so that's a little closer to making sense. For me, you could still buy $5,000 worth of gas, 2,500 gallons, for more than 50,000 free miles. Of course, your greenie credibility goes up with a full EV, and that's gotta count for something.
Range anxiety may be fairly new to the automotive lexicon, but it's something that all new electric vehicle owners think about, at least at first. Is there enough juice to get me from A to B? With that in mind, I decided to embark on a long-term test of this Kia Soul EV. In the process, I learned to live electric. The differences between the Soul EV and its gas-powered counterpart are subtle. The EV arrives with unique colours and a different grille. It hides the charge point. Size-wise, very little changes. There is less rear seat foot space, but that's about it. The more meaningful difference is found in the curb weight. The EV is 200 kilograms heavier than its gas-powered sibling because of the main 27 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. It adds 282 kilograms. Aside from the use of some recycled materials, the cabin of this EV is all sole. There was one thing I did learn to appreciate. When you're planning a trip, you punch it into the nav. It then shows you how far you can drive before you need to think about recharging the battery. When that time does arrive, you simply push another button, it brings up all the local charging stations, you pick it, the nav takes you there, and it really does help to eliminate that range anxiety.
The Soul's electric motor, which drives the front wheels through a single-speed transmission, puts out 109 horsepower and 210 pound-feet of torque. This is enough to whisk the EV from rest to 100k in 11.4 seconds. Now that is slower than the gas-powered model, but as the torque arrives the instant the wheels begin to turn, the pull off the line was noticeably crisper. It also cruises the highway with equal aplomb.
Now this EV has a number of different modes. There's drive and brake, and you can use eco with both of those different driving modes. Now the temptation is to stick it into drive and away you go, but that's not good for driving range. The best setting is brake with eco on. That way this car becomes a one-pedal drive because it ramps up the amount of regen braking. That in turn extends the driving range. There's an old saying, you can always get 5 litres of gas off a tow truck. They can't bring you a bucket of electrons, at least not yet.
Find out how far the Soul EV would go on a near-freezing day, I drove a mix of highway, urban streets and city roads. While I would have liked colder temperatures, the day started off at 5C and 127 kilometres showing in the range meter. At the end of the test, I'd clocked 54.3 kilometres on the highway. The rest was either city or urban. Setting out, I was hoping to pull 120 kilometres of driving out of the battery. At the end of the test, I'd driven 145.4 kilometres and still had 17k showing as my distance to empty. That was better than I expected given the need to keep warm and the fact the headlights were on.
Perhaps the most important lesson I learned was to precondition the cabin while I was recharging the battery overnight. That way, when you get into the car in the morning and you head out, the cabin is already up to temperature, so you're only using the battery to maintain the temperature. On a -15 day, if you head out without preconditioning, well, getting the cabin up to temperature, it really does have a big effect on driving range.
As with the rest of the EV's makeup, the ride and handling characteristics do not stray too far from those of the gas-powered Soul. The suspension does an equally good job of soaking up road irregularities and controlling unwanted body motion. The only caveat is the additional mass means the initial turn-in, well, it felt slightly sluggish towards the limit. The steering itself is crisp and the feedback better than many similar electrically assisted systems. All in all, most drivers would be very hard-pressed to pick up on the differences between the electric and gasoline versions of the Soul.
You know, I managed to squeeze almost 162 kilometres out of this Soul EV and at temperatures near freezing. If you factor in that there's really no other compromise, this has to be one of the best electrified vehicles on the road.